Hello, everyone, and welcome to this third in our edition of the AgileDad University webinar series. My name is Lee Henson, president and founder of AgileDad, and I'm so glad that you could be here with us today. Today, we're going to talk about a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. It's a powerful topic. It has to do with how can we best engage and motivate and keep our teams in a way that they really enjoy working for your company and they really enjoy just doing what they do best. This is something that's been a challenge for a lot of organizations, and I suspect it'll continue to be a challenge, especially with recent layoffs due to COVID and other things that are happening. And I know there are a handful of people who send me their resumes that are out there in the market looking for work, some extremely qualified, really, really strong people. So I want to make sure that we give all of you an opportunity to hopefully gain some knowledge from this. Now, even if you're not in a position where you're a hiring manager, it's okay for you to be here because this is going to be something that gives you some awesome insight into ways that you can engage your team at low cost or little or no cost and really have them dig in and want to be better and want to do better as individuals and as an organization. If this is your first time joining us, thank you for being here. My name is Lee Henson. I am, like I said, the president and founder of AgileDad. I've been doing this since the beginning of time, at least it feels that way. I was personally trained and mentored by Ken Schwaber. I officially opened AgileDad as a company in 2012, and we've had great success since then trying to help organizations achieve business agility. There's just so much out there that's going on right now, and we hope that can leave each of you with a pearl of knowledge that's going to help you be successful. Speaking of knowledge, we do have a lot of upcoming sessions. So I just wanted to remind you beyond this that we do have a certified Scrum Master, our Agile Essentials one day, our Agile Leadership one day, certified Scrum Product Owner, advanced certified Scrum Master, another certified Scrum Master, and then a second advanced certified Scrum Master. What's interesting about that is the one on May 21st and 22nd, if I'm not on Pacific time, and the one Eastern time or East Coast time. That's why they're two. So I just thought I'd throw that out there because we had some confusion regarding that earlier. So I wanted to make sure that we got that right. So the topics that we're going to cover today, the topics that we're going to press forward with, here are the 9 things that we're going to discuss. So number 1, pay people what they're worth. How do we do that? What does that mean? 2, provide them with a pleasant place to work, which I think is really nice. 3, offer opportunities for self-development and growth. 4, foster collaboration within the team. 5, encourage happiness, probably one of my favorite topics. 6, don't punish failure. 7, set clear goals. 8, don't micromanage. And 9, avoid useless meetings. And I think if you can get even a few of these down, this makes for a really good checklist that you can use internally so that you can use this and just kind of say, hey, where are we on this? And give yourself a rating. If it's something that you're doing really, really well, give yourselves a thumb up on this page. If it's something that you feel like, we're doing it, but we have room for improvement, give yourself a dash or a hyphen. If you feel like this is something that you're not even tackling, that it's something that you haven't even breached yet, then go ahead and give yourself an X, and an X is okay because like we said yesterday, failure is an option and it's an opportunity for us to improve. So I don't expect anyone on this session to have all 9 of these nailed. If they did, well, they probably wouldn't be here. So with this being said, I want to make sure I'm clear. We're going to talk a lot about things that are going to be within your wheelhouse, but we're also going to talk about some things that might be above your pay grade or some things that organizations have done to be successful. And I want to do that to plant a seed because I do know that there are at least a handful of executives or leaders who are on the call, and I appreciate that. And I want to make sure that we can give them the tools that they need to help their organizations really feel confident that the people that they have, are going to be the people that they keep. And I remember this story. It's a Richard Branson story. And if you've ever been in one of my classes before, you've probably heard it, but I'll share it again. It was one of these opportunities where Richard was looking to cut some costs. It was around was dissolve lines, and he was looking for to potentially save or see if it was just going to be a worthwhile effort. Side consulting team to kind of take a look at things and see where he was. And they said, Richard, they said, we've got this nailed. They said, all you have to do is cut back on your costs for training and cut back on your costs for education. If you cut that education budget by 20 or 30%, you'd have more than enough that you need to maintain and to keep, Virgin America afloat. Besides, what happens if you train all these people and end up leaving? And I remember he had a smirk on his face and he looked back at the consultant and said, yeah, but what happens if I don't provide them with opportunity for training and they stay? If you're not going to train them and you're not going to give them opportunities for growth and they stay, I would argue that's probably way worse than giving them the opportunity and having them leave. One of the things that we found is that when people do move from one organization to another, many times, we find that they take with them baggage, or they leave everything behind and don't take good traits with them. So I guess in summary, the goal for this session is to show you some tips that you can do to help get people moving in the right direction and to motivate people to keep moving forward, as well as to, find some things that you can apply. Hopefully it's something that you can apply at your level as well. So we got this from a very reputable source. So this is just your intro. This came directly from an article in Inc. magazine, Inc.com. It was called an Agile Adaptation. It's by Peter Economy. That's the guy who wrote it. And it was called The 9 Powerful Ways to Motivate Teams. But I took this with creative liberty and permission and gave it an agile adaptation, an agile twist. So if you go and find the original article, these are the same exact 9 topics. In fact, what I did to, kind of solidify it is I took ideas and concepts from the original write-up, and I included those in the comic book. But for the slide deck, I included the agile twist. And the reason I did that is because I wanted people to really get the flavor of, why these things are important, what the agile flair is. If you've watched Office Space, you know how much I love flair, right? You have to have at least, 40 pieces of flair, or else it's just not going to work out. But I want to make sure that we have the agile flair going on. So I love this quote here at the bottom. It says, "Don't make the kind of mistakes that drain energy from the members of your team. Instead, fire them up." So we're hoping that there's something here, that there's a nugget, a pearl of wisdom, something that you'll enjoy that's going to get you fired up and just make you excited to be part of the organization that you're with, a part of the team that you're working with. So without any further ado, let's get started. Let's dive in. So the first one, I love my cartoon from Scrooge. Every time I see that, I just crack up laughing. Keep on working, bah, humbug, right? It's pay people what they're worth. Now, I have an interesting concept here, and it's a cool story, so I'll share it real quick. I was in an organization, and they pulled me aside, and they said, we need you to come in and, help us with some coaching, some leadership coaching. I said, yeah, sure. So I went in to do some leadership coaching, and they let me know, they alerted me, they said, one of the first things we want to do is we want to do away with annual pay increases. We don't want to do that anymore. We want to do something different. We want to stop paying people, a minimal increase every year. Instead, we have this concept that we want to do that was a profit sharing pool. And on the surface, it sounded great, but it scared me to death as well, because I thought to myself, there are a lot of people who've been with this company for some time. And when you tell them that they're not going to get an annual increase, that's almost like a ticket to ride. That's almost like sending them out the door, right? That's almost like telling them, hey, polish your resume. We don't care anymore. But after thinking about it and giving it some thoughtful consideration, I thought that if you coupled that with something else, that it would work really well. So picture, if you will, I'm going to hypothetically pick on someone who's on the call here, someone that I know well. It's my good friend, Steve. If I said, Steve, I said, come into my office. And Steve comes into my office, and I'm a leader. And I say, hey, listen, Steve, sit down. We need to talk for a minute. I went through and I evaluated over the last 90 days. We went through and we evaluated a bunch of different companies, right? We did a survey and we evaluated a bunch of different companies. And what we found is that people who are in your position in other companies are currently being paid more than you are today. So what we want to do is we want to make that right. So we're going to start by giving you a 6% increase, or whatever that number is, 4%, 6%, whatever it is, the difference, the disparity. We want to give you that increase right away because we want to make sure you're competitive in the marketplace. Okay. Now that's exciting, right? That's good news. Now comes, with every yin is a yang. In Once Upon a Time, the TV show, they always said, all magic comes with a price, right? So here's the price. The price is, we're doing away with annual increases. We're going to get you up to par with where you need to be, but we're not going to do the annual increases anymore. What we're going to do instead is something called a profit share. And the way the profit share works is, if you, Steve, can help your team become successful, if you can help the group that you're working with collectively become successful, that means everyone on the team will be rewarded with a percentage of the profit share. If you cannot help your entire team become successful, even if what you're doing is prolific, if the entire team isn't uplifted, nobody qualifies for that incentive. Now, on the surface, I looked at this and I said, is this going to create animosity between individuals or is it going to create problems between teams? But what I quickly realized, I said, I said, you never know unless you try. Let's give it a shot. So we did it inside of this company. It was a fairly large company. And what we found was something really interesting. What we found was that if someone wasn't pulling their weight, if Johnny wasn't pulling his weight, people were quick to say, Johnny, what's going on, man? You said you're going to finish these things. You didn't finish them. You're not going to make us fall behind. Look, you're hitting me in the pocketbook now, right? So it increased team accountability, but not in a negative way. It didn't have people at each other's throats, but it introduced something really, really cool. It introduced two different mentalities that I want to share with you today. The first one is called the Spider-Man mentality. Now, I'm going to give you a spoiler. If you've never seen The Amazing Spider-Man, I apologize, but it's going to make sense. In the original Amazing Spider-Man, Spider-Man's trying to, after he gets bit by the spider and realizes he has these superhuman powers, he's trying to help his aunt and uncle meet their bills. They're far behind on their bills. So he decides to enter a wrestling tournament. And in a wrestling tournament, they have this big thing. You can win a big prize or, the big money if you beat this one wrestler. Well, he went through and beat all the different wrestlers that he needed to beat. And he went to go collect his purse. He went to collect his prize. And when he did, the guy who ran the thing wasn't going to pay it to him. He says, no, I'm not going to pay you that. And he was only going to give him a small portion of the money. And Spider-Man got upset and somebody came in to rob this guy. And instead of stopping the guy from robbing, he let the guy rob, the guy who ran the event. And as a result, on this guy's escape, here comes the spoiler, he ends up carjacking a vehicle that belongs to his uncle. And in a grand scheme of things, he ends up killing him, but he doesn't really. And I don't want to get into that detail. But the point is, with great power comes great responsibility, right? So when I say the Spider-Man mentality, I tell teams that I'm going to empower you to have all the tools you need to be successful. I'm going to empower you to help make sure you're getting paid a fair salary. I'm going to empower you to make sure you're getting a balance, a work-life balance, so you're able to leave work at work and go home. I'm going to help you to not have to do work nights and weekends. And all of this comes in part of the pay package, if you will, or recognizing what people are worth, right? Because I think sometimes we don't recognize the worth of individuals, and we end up in this bad place. So it's important for us to realize that that's one piece of it. The second piece of this is my favorite, and this ties back to the pay. This is called the survivor mentality. So if you've ever seen the TV show Survivor, they have the concept of if someone's not pulling her weight, if Susie's not pulling her weight, we're going to vote her off the island, right? The tribe has spoken, right? And that's it. She's out like an 8-track tape, out like a bad knee, out like a hip replacement, right? It's just the team needs to have the ability to build something special. And what do I mean by that? If we're a team collectively and there's someone who's just not a good cultural fit, or that person's just not a good gel or match for this team, the team needs to have the ability to adjust. So a lot of times you hear people talking about self-organized teams or self-engaging teams and self-empowering teams. And people don't understand what that means when it says self-organization. And what I've discovered is that if you put this type of incentive in front of teams, they will self-organize. I've seen people who are highly qualified individuals who maybe just weren't a good cultural fit for a team, get told by the team, the tribe has spoken, and we move that person from team A to team B or from team B to team C. And what we discover is that that individual instantly adds great value on that other team, and that team ends up becoming high performing and sharing in a profit share, which is really interesting. But if we had left it the way that it was, neither of the two teams would have qualified because neither of them would have reached a high performing state. So as part of paying people what they're worth, it means that from a leadership level, that I am going to agree to let teams self-perform, self-evaluate, and self-organize. I'm going to reward them for success instead of punishing them for success. And I'm going to find ways to help them fit in with the other, team members. It's really, really interesting. So we had a question that came in about bad cultural fit. And the question was, how does this intersect with equity and equality issues that can often be hidden underneath that phrase? That's a good question. One of the things that we pride ourselves in on AgileDad is diversity. We've got so many different people who work for us from all different walks of life. And what I can tell you is, I don't know that that's a problem in the organizations where we've done this. Every place that I've ever seen it done, I don't think they're shunning someone because of what they wear or who they love or or maybe even, age or any kind of discriminatory way, what we find is that sometimes there's just a group of people who really gel together. And oftentimes what we find is that it comes from diversity, right? So these individuals, the more diverse team is, the better this works. If you get teams that are very, how should I put it, homogenous. If you get teams that are homogenous, what I found is homogenous teams really struggle with this concept. If you get teams that are all the same, or all the same type of people, or all from the same background, this is something that they really struggle with. What I find is the teams with the greatest diversity are the ones who do better. So that kind of defeats the bad culture fit type thing. And what you have to realize is when someone said the tribe has spoken, that person's not fired. All that means is that person is going to move on to a different team. And what we find is, a lot of times when we make those shifts, it's only one-time shifts. It's not something where, the person's being shifted from team to team to team. Now, I have had one instance, and we'll just call the guy Little Johnny, where Johnny, every team that got him, they moved him. They felt like he wasn't a good fit for A, he wasn't a good fit for B, he wasn't good. And when you talk to the team members, they said, yeah, Johnny lied on his resume. He can't do the skills that he said he could, in which case he needs to go find another job somewhere else, right? So this just gives the team the ability to really self-regulate, to open the doors for people who will embrace. And a lot of times what I like to do is, even at interviews, when it comes time for that final interview before someone onboards, if I know which team they're going to be working closely with, I like to give them an opportunity, or when I say them, that team, the opportunity to at least ask a few questions, to get a feel for this person, to see if they think this person might be a good fit. And I'm not saying that they're all knowing. Sometimes, people who work in that industry may not have the same, how should I put it, interpersonal soft skills that are necessary in order to do that type of evaluation. But the truth is, we should be coming at every job position without cognitive bias. And what I've discovered is many organizations still have cognitive bias, whether it comes to, and it's discriminatory and it's sad, whether it comes to age or whatever the case may be, because the truth is you can't just base things, on past experience alone. You kind of have to have a feel for who this person is, what type of contribution they can make. I mean, don't get me wrong, past experience is an incredible indicator, but at the same time, there needs to be one more piece to the puzzle. And I think that's the piece that people are missing. And that's the piece that was talked about in the very early days of Scrum. In the book that was published by Ken Schwaber in 2003, he talks about this quite a bit. He talks about self-organizing teams, meaning that the teams won't line everybody up on a fence and say, I'll pick Steve, I'll pick Julie, I'll pick Tom. But what they will do is, after they're organized into a team, they'll say, hey, these people are a really good fit. These people, not so much, but we're going to give it a chance to see how it goes. And over time, they'll make adjustments. They'll make trades. They'll make good fits. And what I found is a very positive experience. So I know a lot of people look at this and they say, that's kind of strange. But when I say pay people what they're worth, the three takeaways are: one, make sure that we understand from a salary perspective that people feel like they're being paid fairly. Two, make sure we're looking for alternate forms of compensation to help them feel like, they're enjoying what they're doing, and that they're happy. And three, let the team self-organize if possible, so that they can rally around a cause. And what we found is when teams do this, they tend to become high performing quicker, and they tend to get products and services to market faster. We found that there's significant value add in letting teams do these things. So this is just step one. We've got 8 more to go, but I wanted to get this one in there, and it's an important one, so I wanted to spend some time there. So help people discover the right cultural fit, help them feel like they have control of where they are and what they're doing. And, even if you're not the person who has control of the budget or what people are paid, maybe you can help provide the right environment, which kind of leads me to number 2. But I love this quote at the end: every dollar employers invest in their people, their salary and training, it's certain to come back in multiples. And I've just witnessed this firsthand in many, many organizations. Don't be afraid to invest in your people. When you invest in your people, you'll get that money back tenfold. It's just the way it happens. Okay. So our second one: provide individuals with a pleasant place to work. I love this. So the team manager says, okay, you're going to move down into the lower level. And, you see the guy there, one of the team leads, he's like, well, at least it's spacious, right? But you get the dead bodies on the ground and a rat's chewing things and a spider in a corner. I don't think it's this bad. But how many times have you just worked in a place where your work element sucks? You're stuck in cube land. You're stuck in this place where you just feel like, wow, if only I could look out of the window once a day, or if only I could, see that, life is going on around me, or if only I had people around me that I could communicate with openly. And even now in this COVID environment, if I had better ways to communicate with my peers other than just a Slack channel where we're typing to each other, I want to talk to somebody from time to time. And I think that a pleasant place to work, I've lived a semi-charmed life. I have this in spades. One of the very first places or very early places that I worked was at eBay, a little company called eBay. And what I can tell you is the stuff that they had there for their employees was amazing. Just all the different amenities and the things to help keep people engaged. And a lot of people were accusational saying, yeah, that's just so they could keep you there, all day and all night doing work because they knew you'd want to stay there. And I would have to disagree. I think that they provided these amenities because they wanted you to both be physically happy and emotionally happy. They wanted you to be mentally happy. They wanted you to have the tools that you needed to be successful. But they also wanted to make sure that you were happy in your work environment. I'll never forget, I did an engagement with 1-800-CONTACTS. And what I can tell you is they're a fantastic company. And they had a chef on site that would provide food, like world-class food for a fraction of the cost, supplemented. They have a full workout facility. They have quarterly engagements where they get to go see movies that are front row movies at a cinema where they rent out the entire theater. They have these huge events throughout the year. And the one thing that I noticed about this company is that even if you were just a call center worker, a customer service representative who answered the phones, they were genuinely happy and they loved what they did. And it was just so amazing to see because, yeah, they got little widgets and gizmos and, hats and t-shirts and stuff. And they had bonuses and little incentives along the way. But the environment was the thing that everyone talked about. They're like, man, why would you want to work anywhere else? The environment here is so cool. I mean, outdoor basketball courts, their developers, if a new game came out on the market, a new multiplayer game on a computer, they would buy each developer a copy of the game and let them play it together because they knew they were into gaming, give them an hour of company time to do that. It was just amazing to see how well these teams were rewarded for providing the skills that they needed to help the organization be successful. If you're spending a third of your life in your office, if you're spending a third of your life in your workplace, we want to make sure that this is a place where you're happy, that this is a place where you can engage. And I love this word, and I use it often. You need to create an agile ecosystem. It's the same as you creating an ecosystem for any type of animal. You need to create an environment where you feel comfortable, where you feel safe, where you feel welcome. There's just so many things you can do to really encourage people to engage and to encourage people to be happy. And I think that this is just one of the things where you'd be so surprised. I've seen some of the places where people work and it blows my mind. I'm not going to say which government agency, but I had an opportunity to work with a government agency. And literally, this group worked in a bunker pretty much. It was 4 levels down from the main level in a basement. So you can imagine. It was an old school type office, cue balls everywhere, secure areas, with the big locking doors, sirens would go off. They worked on top secret stuff. But the point is, it was crazy to see that the environment was so dismal and so gray and so sterile. And it was just, this makes me sad to say, but there was very little happiness. There was no happiness. It was just amazing for me to see that these people were, wow, just, they were engaged, but the level of happiness was just not there. And it was sad. And I was just hoping, that they could find a way to re-engage and to become happy. But it was just really frustrating to see that they chose to have, how shall I put it? I don't want to call it convenience, but it chose to have conformity, right? Where everything was equal and everyone, we're going to make everything with pure equality and everything's equal and everybody's happy. I mean, it was to the point where they had people who would measure out cube space with like a tape measure to make sure that everyone's cube was exactly spaced the same. I mean, it was probably your biggest nightmare. It was worse than Inotech. I mean, it was just one of the worst places in the world to work. And the people weren't happy. But when you took them out of that environment and you got to know them, it was so cool to get to know these people because they were great people. They were brilliant minds. And the things they were creating were world class. It's just, they weren't happy. So I think that when I say an ecosystem, it's a combination of providing people with the things they need to physically be happy, providing people with a place of work where they can be emotionally happy. One of the biggest things that I've found is when people start telling everybody, hey, I work for this company, and I can pick on this one because I have a lot of people who come through my class who work for Johnson and Johnson. And when they come out to my class, one of the things that I see consistently is that they said they love saying they work for J&J. They love the work environment that they're in. And it's really interesting to me because I don't know that, I don't know that I would have pictured that being the one place where people said, I love to work there. And let me tell you why. But it really shines through. And it's just super cool when you get people who feel that way. Because what we've found is when organizations work with individuals to create this environment, that's when it's smooth sailing and you got lots of other things going on. Yeah. Okay, so we got a lot more to cover, so I don't want to spend too much time on any one. So let's jump to the next one. This one's my favorite. Offer opportunities for self-development. I love these guys working out. He's got, it looks like JavaScript on one side and Python on the other. He's lifting there. And this guy getting water says, how many coding languages did you learn today? And the other guy said 15, and I didn't even break a sweat. I don't know that it's that extreme. I think that's kind of a funny cartoon. But yeah, it's just, so many organizations forget a message from Depeche Mode that we got in 1985. They taught us that people are people, right? And I think that it's just so important for us to treat people with dignity and respect. But on top of that, to give people an opportunity to grow and improve. One of the concepts that we teach often is a concept called Team John, where every single sprint, one person on each team has an opportunity to rotate off. And when they rotate off, the purpose is so that if there's interruptions or things that happen, there's more than just a scrum master who can chase down those interruptions. It allows the core team to stay focused on the work that they're trying to do. And it allows for individuals who rotate off, for 1 2-week sprint, and it's a rotation, it allows for that individual to kind of handle the inbound fires. And the truth is, most of the time, those inbound fires are just something that we can slate up and get ready to be the first item we address in the next sprint. A lot of times it doesn't require them to work on it at that moment, which is super cool. So what is this person doing when there's downtime? Well, my hope is that they'll be engaging in opportunities for self-improvement, that they'll find ways to grow, whether it's attending a training session, whether it's attending a webinar like the one you're on now. I appreciate that. Whether it's reading a book about an emergent or up-and-coming technology, whether, I've even seen some employers do more off-the-wall things. Like I know at Ancestry.com, one of the things they do is a Habitat for Humanity project, right? And it gives people an opportunity just to be out of the firing zone, if you will, and to take one step back and sharpen their saw. And one of the things that we've discovered is when you do this, people look forward to being on this team. Now, what I can tell you is there's 3 rules for being on Team John. And John, by the way, isn't meant John the Crapper. John is it's named after a very dear friend of mine who was in the military. And he passed away from a brain aneurysm, but he would always write in the bottom of his emails, always here to help, John. So it's named after him because it's my way of paying tribute to someone who really was always there to help. No matter what the situation, he would always be involved and always want to help, yes? So with that being said, there are 3 rules for being on Team John. Rule number 1 is you're not allowed to work on anything in the current sprint. If you work on something in the current sprint and you get interrupted, that's the same as interrupting the whole team. We want to avoid those interruptions. Number 2, you're not allowed to be on Team John for while you're on vacation. You need to be present to win. And number 3 is the person on Team John is not allowed to just work on bug fixes or negative work. We want that person to engage and work on things that are positive and uplifting. And what we found is if you do that, it sharpens their saw. But I think the more important thing, and this is the big takeaway, is that if you apply this principle inside of the organization, it literally costs nothing. In fact, it's a profit center, because what winds up happening is the team of 5 with 0 interruptions is more productive than a team of 6 who's constantly being interrupted. So what you're doing is you're creating a pattern or an ecosystem where somebody can feel good rotating off, and they can feel good about wiping a machine or installing the latest instance of Visual Studio Eclipse, or making sure they have Azure lined up the way that they need to, and if they have all the tools they need to be successful in the future. Maybe they read an up-and-coming book. Here, I'm going to say it, maybe to go to mommy or daddy daughter donut day, right? The point I'm trying to make is they need to do these things to help themselves grow and improve. And I think that when I see organizations, bend and do these things, on the surface, it sounds kind of silly because they may feel like they're losing up front, but what they're gaining in return, I can tell you, is far more than what they're ever giving out. So, while this cartoon is a little bit exaggerated, my hope is that you'll have an opportunity to really dig in and engage and find a way to let people do this. Now, if you can't rotate people off for a sprint at the time, or if your teams are too small, if you have less than 5 people on a team or 5 or less, it doesn't make sense to rotate someone off because you need that many people to do the work. This ties back to the concept of try limiting work in progress. If you limit the scope or number of projects that are in flight, what ends up happening as a natural effect is that team size can increase and it can swarm to work on individual projects to deliver them sooner. So the byproduct is you end up with happier people who now have time for self-development, for self-improvement, and it just really creates this dynamic workplace. And I've just seen this work so many times. It's just a powerful, powerful, powerful tool. A lot of them offer health incentives. My daughter is a cast member at the Walt Disney Company, and she tells me all the time that they offer these incentives to help them drink more water, to stay active, or to do things, or to get 10,000 steps a day. And it sounds so silly because the award might be something small, a yoga mat, a water bottle. And of course, it's insignia for branding from the company. But the point is, it just lets people know that they're appreciated. And I think that if you give people opportunities to self-improve, if you're paying them what they're worth, giving them a nice place to work in, and giving them opportunities to improve, you're going to see this consistency that happens where people are just going to be so happy. I mean, I've even heard where individuals were offered a position at one company, with a higher pay grade, and at the second company with a little bit lower pay grade, but they were promised 2 weeks per quarter where they could do this self-improvement. And they were willing to take the pay cut for the self-improvement because that work-life balance, that satisfaction of knowing that, I'm valued, that goes a long way within an organization. So when it comes to self-improvement or self-development, find creative ways that are inexpensive for your organization to do this. Some of them have book clubs where they buy everybody a book and say, hey, we're going to read this book and we're going to go through it. That's a great way for people to learn. Some of them do projects together, Habitat for Humanity, or take your choice, whatever project you want them to work on. When a COVID thing goes away, we had one group that would go and visit elderly people who maybe didn't have family that would go visit them and just kind of hang out with them and talk to them. I know it sounds so silly, but these little things make a huge difference, because if you can grow internally as a person, it's going to help you grow as a team, and that's going to help you grow as an organization. So the little things actually do matter. The little things make a huge difference, and I think they're often overlooked. With that being said, it leads into collaboration. So this is the funniest cartoon I think in a whole bunch right here. This boss here, this leader, he apparently went to a conference somewhere and he got this brilliant idea. He says, okay, in order to foster communication, I've decided we should work with our hands tied together. It'll be fun. And the guy's like, I have to use the restroom. And the other guy's like, oh, donuts. And the lady in the middle is like, oh boy. All right. It's just, once again, as silly as it sounds, if you're forcing collaboration, you're not going to get very far. But if you make collaboration an element of what the team does, if you do it naturally through making sure that you have the right people attending meetings, make sure you have the right planned inputs and outputs, make sure you've got people who feel like they're being rewarded for engaging instead of feeling very negative about engaging. We need to make certain that these people understand that the more they collaborate and communicate, that the better they're going to be, because communication is the hub of all success within the Agile workspace. And I think it's just so important for us to have that open line of communication, that open thought process. We had a question that came up real quick that I want to address now, right on the fly. It said, what's the best way to encourage team members to feel like they can independently think as well, and not expecting to be directed to think or to do a certain way? And I think that what I've discovered with my psychology background is that people want to think independently. The problem is a lot of times they've gotten burned in the past by someone who is being critical of their independent thought process, or someone who felt like their thoughts or ideas weren't adding value. So there's a lot of, how should I put it? There's a lot of room for increased or better communication. But one of the things that I see is oftentimes when people think independently, they get slapped down. So one of the things that I talk about is, better ways to do open concept meetings. to encourage brainstorming, to listen to all the different ideas, to throw some things out there. And that way they can, kind of get their head around it. But I guess I should say the hard part, or the yang of that, is that when you let people independently think, sometimes you wind up in a situation where uh, they want to solve problems their own way because they don't see the bigger picture. So you have to be careful that you're giving them the right level of visibility into what decisions are being made and where they're being included, without trying to, limit or throttle their amount of creativity, but at the same time allowing them to really thrive and to feel like they have a level of comfort. One of the things that I always say is, in every session that I teach, I always ask this question. So I teach a whole module about Agile concepts. And then at the end, I say, if there's one thing about your organization that you could change, if I gave you the genie in a lamp with one wish only, or if I had a magic lever you could pull or a magic wand, and you could change one thing in your organization regarding roles, responsibility, collaboration, the framework, where would you start? What would be the one lever you would pull? But the key is without recourse, without getting fired, without any retribution, without feeling like something bad's going to happen. And what we discover is when people feel like they're working in an environment of psychological safety, they behave that way. So I guess what I'm seeing here is that this is a symptom. It's typically a symptom that the team was allowed to think independently at some point, or individuals were allowed to think independently, and someone came down on them pretty hard and it hurt. So now they're very cautious about thinking independently. I think the big thing here is that we need to also understand that failure isn't a bad thing, which is coming up in a little bit. But we need to make sure we encourage them to say, hey, look, failure breeds innovation. And even if your idea is not the best idea, it should be an idea that we can run with that breeds innovation. That's going to help us be successful later. So we want to make sure that we reward them when they come up with great ideas, and we acknowledge their ideas, that they don't just fall into the bucket of endless woe, is what I like to call it, right? So if you have a bucket of endless woe, you're not going to be in good shape. Okay, so then the follow-up was, how do you encourage that collaboration? So one of the things that I found is, if you have more frequent, shorter meetings with team members. For example, one of the things I heavily promote is understanding a backlog refinement session. What is a backlog refinement session? Well, it's 1 hour a week per team with the product owner, where it's one team at a time. They get to spend time with the product owner, and they get to solve problems. So they get to reallocate estimates. They get to break things down in a task. They get to look at new work. They get to see new challenges. And one of the things that we do is we have the product owner introduce, okay, for this session, my goal is going to be to help form up acceptance criteria in these items. So what do you think of this one? And just openly encourage the team to give feedback, to provide that feedback. Another way that we do it, especially if the teams are remote, or if the teams are in an environment where they're, how should I put it, more quiet, more timid, is I'll let the teams write things on sticky notes, ideas on sticky notes, and we'll just go and stick the sticky notes on the wall. And then we'll do like a dot voting round where they can vote up or vote down the ones. Each team member gets 3 dots, and you're only allowed to vote on one of your own. And that way you can vote up the ones you need to, and you can get those votes up, so that way everybody can see, what things rise to the top as the things that they want to talk the most about or collaborate about. I think part of it is having a team understand something conceptually. So whenever I talk about fostering collaboration with the team, here's how I approach it. I have a single way that I approach it, because I want individuals to feel like all of their talents are being used. So a lot of times when I approach the team, I'll say, okay, it seems like there's been some confusion lately about XYZ, or what's going on, or, we haven't been collaborating or talking as much as we could. So with regard to this product, or with regard to this project, or with regard to this sprint, what was our goal, or what is our goal, right? What's our goal? Where are we now, right? And then what is our reality, right? So it's the grow model. What is our reality? Looking at both of those, what options or opportunities do we have to improve? And then the W is, what will we commit to do? And I think that if you look at your goal, look at your reality, look at your options or opportunities, and get the team to make a solid commitment, this is one way to kind of, I don't want to say back them into communication, but one way to encourage them to communicate, because they know that their voice is being heard. They know that they're being listened to. One of the things that I acknowledge is that the majority of times when teams aren't communicating well, or they're not collaborating, it's because they don't feel like their voice is being heard. Or they're a bunch of team members who are just I-shaped individuals, who they have very deep knowledge in one particular area, but they don't have a broad knowledge across an entire area of whatever they're working on. So here, I want to encourage T-shaped individuals to work together, because the T-shaped individual is going to ask questions. They're going to be inquisitive. They're going to ask if they don't know something. Where an I-shaped individual would never ask a question, because they feel like if they ask a question, it takes away from their power of being the one who's all-knowing. So they won't ask the right questions, and you'll never have that collaboration. So I guess if I had to sum this one up, work towards T-shaped individuals who have both a deep knowledge in one area or subject and broad, lightweight knowledge in other areas. Help teams collaborate by finding neat open formats for them to give feedback, whether you use Grow or an open space workshop or a big room planning workshop. Give teams an opportunity to express from a technological perspective where they're trying to go, what they're trying to do, and how they want to engage. Avoid tying people's hands together like this. I know it sounds silly for me to say, but I hear people all the time, I went to this conference and we're going to do trust falls as a team, or we're going to go outside and run an obstacle course, and that's the last thing. I guarantee you, Andre Introvert does not want to run your obstacle course. I'm just throwing it out there, right? Sorry, it's just not going to happen. Or if it does happen, they're going to be like, really? And I don't think they're going to gain the introspect that you're trying to get them to gain. So if you're trying to get teams to communicate, find creative ways. And the best advice I can give you is your Scrum Master should be a repository of these type of things that they can do to help the team engage. And if your Scrum Master is struggling to figure some of those out, have them reach out to me. Our Agile coaches are world-class and can certainly get you to a point where you're communicating effortlessly, right? And I think part of it is, and someone put this might be a good idea for a future podcast or for a future webinar, is how can we get teams to engage? A team engagement type webinar. That's a great idea, because we have lots of tools that we use as coaches to get them to engage and collaborate. Too many to talk about here, but there's so many things you can do. And I think part of it is understanding the meetings, like I said earlier, making sure we have the right people in the meetings, that we can let people get back to work, that we have an expected input and output, that we have required people there and optional people, identified. And I think that that's something that's a powerful tool that we can use to help teams be successful and to help them feel like their voice is being heard. Teams who collaborate communicate, and teams need to feel like their voice is being heard. So that's the big message here, right? This one, like I said, is my favorite in the entire presentation. Encourage happiness. This guy walks in and he says, guess I was asking for this when I said make work more like a vacation, make it as fun as a vacation. The guy's drinking a frozen drink, laying on a chair. I remember there was a past employer who I'll remain nameless because this could be looked at positively or negatively, but they had relaxation rooms where you could go and you could literally lay in a massage chair. You could put on headphones and choose a channel of type of music, genre of music that you wanted to listen to. You could set a timer and put on blackout eyepieces, blackout visor, and it would pump into the room aromatherapy if you preferred, or whatever you wanted to do. And you could lay in that room for your 20-minute break, your 30-minute break, or 15 minutes. And you could just lay there in that room and it would give you a massage. It would play the music genre you liked. It would pump in a smell. I mean, by the time you left this recharge room, you were like a whole new person. Some people said they got better rest in that room than they got in a full 8-hour sleep at home. Some people would just get so excited to go lay in that room. They come to work 30 minutes early just to go lay down, to book out one of the rooms. But what we found is that when you can encourage team members to be happy, the happier they are, the better they perform. It's just that there's a direct correlation there. So I guess the big question is, how do we get people to say, hey, I love what I do. I love what I work. I feel like I'm being paid fairly. Everything's good. How can we encourage them to have this happiness? And I think the piece that people miss is we need to create an environment where they feel like they're in a place of psychological safety. So you may have heard me say that term before, but for me, psychological safety means more than just I can speak my mind. Psychological safety means I'm comfortable with the people that I work with. I am comfortable with the people who are supervisors. I'm comfortable with the team or the organization. I like the products that we build, the products or services that we build. I understand what they are and I appreciate what we build and I know how it's helping mankind. I love that we can work together to build these products or services. I'm encouraged that that these are bringing positive, happy vibes to the world, or that it's changing the world that we live in. What we found is that you need to find really creative ways to instill this happiness in your teams, because this is something that there's a huge return on investment for it, but you gotta find creative ways to do it. This is something that's not easy. So one of the things that I talk about in my advanced Scrum Master class, and is a powerful tool, is I encourage people to have an unplanned work session. What do I mean by that? So something where it's completely unplanned, where I'm like, hey, Jenny, let's go for a walk, right? So I'll grab Jenny and we'll go for a walk outside. And I'll ask her one of the following three questions. Now, keep in mind, this wasn't a meeting on her calendar. This wasn't a scheduled 15-minute event. This was just, hey, let's go for a walk talk, right? It's a walk talk, and that's what I like to call it. And I'll ask one of the following three questions. The first one is one of my favorites. It's, Jenny, tell me, what's the one thing that you love the most about what you do? What is the one thing that excites you every Monday morning when you wake up? What's the one thing that motivates you to get to work? What's the one thing that makes you hit the button on the alarm and say, I am ready. I am ready to seize the day. Carpe diem. I am ready to get in there and do my thing. What is the one thing that excites you the most about what you do? What is the one thing you love the most about your job? Separate conversation, separate day, maybe even a different person. I might say, hey, Bill, tell me, what is the one thing about your job that makes you wish you had an eternal snooze button, a button where you'd never have to go to work again? What is the one thing that you dread the most about what you do? What is the one thing you loathe doing every time you come to work? What is the one thing that sucks away your will to live, right? And you'd be surprised. Sometimes I hear simple answers like, I really don't want to manage people, or I really don't want to be in a position where, governing people. I would much rather be engaged in a different way. I'd much rather, be a team member doing the work than, being in a leadership type position. Interestingly enough, later that day, I'd have a meeting with that person's manager who says, she's really doing good in that leadership position. We're thinking about expanding and giving her 6 teams to work with instead of, it always happens that way, where you're like, no, don't do that. You're sucking away her will to live. It doesn't work that way, right? But then the third question is my genie in a bottle question, if you will. I ask people, what do you see yourself doing in a year from now, in 2 years, in 5 years? Do you want to stay here? Do you plan to expand and be in a different role or position? Do you hope that you'll be able to get something, do you hope to be able to get something bigger out of this? And I love that someone pointed this out in the Q&A. I appreciate this. Someone talked about, how do you do this when you have teams that are all over the world, when you have worldwide teams, And what I found is that with different groups from people around the world, different things motivate them, right? In Italy, it might be a bottle of wine at lunch and letting them take a 2-hour lunch so they can come back later and work till 7. That's cultural and it's what they do. Maybe with a team in India, it's talking about the Cricket World Cup and how excited you are about things that are happening, or maybe it's talking about special holidays or things that are happening. It's allowing teams to build this culture and share things that they do outside of work. Hey, there's a reason. I remember when I first went to the UK and everybody was wearing poppy flowers, and everybody's trying to sell me one, but I'm like, why? What's the deal with these flowers? Why are they wearing? It was for Remembrance Day, and once I understood the meaning behind it, it made a lot of sense. But I think that we as individuals don't give culture a chance enough. And if we're going to encourage people to be happy and organizations to be happy, we have to first provide them with an environment where they feel like they're cared about. Second, we need to provide them with a place where they feel like they can say what they need to say. I use the term here, radical candor, and that's an important term to me. There's also a great book titled Radical Candor. If you have a chance to read it, it's a must read. It's on my must read list. But when I talk about radical candor, I'm not talking about just speaking your mind and saying no and empowering you to stand up. That's not the radical candor I'm talking about. I'm talking about radical like a political radical. Abraham Lincoln was a radical, right? I'm talking about being an advocate for something that you strongly believe in. He wanted to abolish slavery, and some people weren't very thrilled about it, but I think it was a good idea. But the point is, sometimes you need to be the person who stands up for what's right. Sometimes you need to be the person who who stands behind someone and says, I care about what your feelings are and I support you. And if you can uplift individuals, what we found is that if you can make them feel like, the truth is every single person contributes at a different level. They have different skills, they've got different talents, they've got different things they bring to the table. I think that if we can let them know that their individual talents and contributions lead to ultimate team success, that we couldn't do it without your piece of the pie, we couldn't do it without your contribution, and make sure that they understand just how important their contribution is, that'll give them some vested accountability. It'll give them some good feeling about what they're building or what they're doing, and it'll help them better understand the vision and strategy for the product or service that they're building, and it'll encourage them to be happy. So happiness isn't something that you learn. Happiness is something that you should have every day, right? If you're finding you have to learn happiness, it's a whole different situation. This is one that we started talking about earlier, but I want to make sure we close the loop on it. It says, don't punish failure. And I think that, I've been in organizations, where literally it feels like they have the sign on the wall that says, we've been accident free for the last 12 days or whatever the case may be, right? And it drives me crazy. I'm like, oh, right. Because you can't expect for people to be perfect. But at the same time, I'm not saying reward failure, like what you see here. Yay, we failed again. I'm not saying reward failure, but I'm also not saying, I'm also saying don't punish failure. I'm not saying reward failure, I guess is what I'm trying to say here. I think that, the quote that everyone hears was Jeff Sutherland quote, fail early, fail often. Wow. Did he really mean that when he said it? I get that all the time in my classes. Did he really mean that? When he said that, is that what he meant? And my answer is always, yeah. Because if you try something and you fail, I remember Meg Whitman once said, failure breeds innovation. And if you fail, usually it's because you were trying something that nobody else was willing to try, that you put yourself out there, that you expressed radical candor, that you were an advocate for standing up for what was right. And this attempt just didn't work. It doesn't mean that your idea was a bad idea. It just means that what you attempted wasn't the right approach. And I think sometimes we need to recognize that in order for teams to grow, that they need to not be rewarded, but they also can't be punished for failing. We need to reward success and not punish failure, but we need to find ways for people to understand that just because they failed doesn't mean that they are unsuccessful and won't be rewarded either. It sounds like it's this conundrum, but at the same time, I guess what I'm trying to say is failure should be avoided. But if you can't avoid failure because you're doing something that's innovative, great. If you fail, then acknowledge that you failed, document what failed and move on. Look at it as an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to really innovate, because some of the people who build some of the greatest things in the world have failed multiple times. I have an entire presentation on this where I list out Walt Disney, Mark Cuban, Oprah Winfrey, Stephanie Germanotta, Dyson. There's so many people, Theodore Seuss. There's so many people who have failed so many times in their life only to get back up. J.K. Rowling, right? And it's so amazing to see how these people have all failed and kind of risen from the ashes. Why, and the unanimous reason why, Stephen King is probably one of my favorite examples of this. He wrote all kinds of incredible books, but one of the first books that he wrote, he thought it was so bad that he threw away the main manuscript. And his partner at the time ended up getting the manuscript out of the waste bin and put it away somewhere, and eventually submitted it to a bunch of different places, and he got his first book published from the thing that he threw away. And I think that it has nothing to do with confidence. It has to do with individuals just really feeling like they can put themselves out there and that they're not going to be stomped on for making an attempt, right? We need to help people feel like they're being courageous and they're adding value. I like that. That's a good way to put it. So one of our commenters said that radical can be considered courageous, which is one of the Agile values. Absolutely. I think that if you're exhibiting courage, extreme courage, and you're going out on a limb and you're standing up for what's right, and you're not restricting failure, but you're not encouraging total failure either. Because the truth is, everybody has a different threshold when it comes for failure. If what you're manufacturing is medical grade respirators, your margin of failure is probably a lot smaller than someone who's manufacturing roller skates, right? It's one of these things where you have to have a certain threshold. But in either case, failure shouldn't be punished. In the case of a respirator, we should look at the failure, in a clinical testing, not in human testing, but in clinical testing, and say, okay, what failed? How can we fix it? How can we make it right? And look at all the features that we added that are, working amazingly, right? And how can we get this product or service to market fastest when it's needed the most? In the case of the roller skates, no big deal. It was an innovative try. We did good, but we tried lining all the wheels up and doing them in line, and people were breaking their ankles. So now we need to go back to having quads where the four wheels are spread out because that was a lot smarter. I don't know, personal opinion there. But the point is, you need to understand that failure doesn't mean that, it's a last resort. Somebody told me once, they said, there's only one thing worse than having some direction, and that's having no direction. And there's only one thing worse than no direction, and that's one direction. We can have that conversation later. But the point is, I want people to feel like they have the ability to fail and still survive. That failure doesn't mean that you're down and out. Failure just means you're down. And it's time to get back up and keep moving forward. Because I can tell you, the teams that fail, the organizations that fail, are the ones that learn the most, and they're the ones that end up with the highest level or the highest degree of high performing teams. They learn from their failures and they move on. And I think that's the big piece. You need to teach teams to move on. It's okay to acknowledge a failure, but you got to make sure that you're not punishing or breaking them down. You want to make sure that you're moving them forward and pressing forward with them. We have a few more to go. Let's talk about goals. So I love this leader. This is probably one of the funnier images too. She says, by Q3, we should be able to do some really amazing things. And the guy looks at the other guy and he says, just smile and nod, right? How many times have you been in that meeting? We're so excited to do these amazing things. We're gonna make the world a better place, and we're gonna. I believe the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way. Show them all the beauty they possess inside. You're sitting here thinking to yourself, that's great, that's wonderful, but it means nothing, right? I love that, when I talk about goals, the first thing that comes to me is goals are directly related to responsibility, and responsibility is related to accountability. So if you can say to yourself, how is the team doing with accountability? Are they engaged and taking ownership of the work that they're trying to do? And then ask yourself, if they're not accepting, that accountability, are they at least, where are they on a responsibility chain? So Christopher Avery, a very dear friend of mine, is a psychologist, and he has something called the responsibility list. And he goes through and he talks about the responsibility. I know he doesn't call it a list, the responsibility process. And he goes through and he talks about all the different levels from blame and shame all the way up to being responsible. And it's just a really neat chart that you can download if you look it up. Just look up Christopher Avery and in responsibility, and you'll see it. It's published in a bunch of different languages. But it's great because you ask yourself, where do they fall in that responsibility chain? Where are they falling short, right? Where are they? And I think that when you get your head around where they are as a coach or a scrum master, it helps you to let everyone else know. And I think the image here speaks volumes, because a picture's worth 1,000 words. This particular person, in their heart of hearts, they want us to do the right thing. They want us to be able to do some really incredible, amazing things. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But if you're not given the right level of detail and you're not setting the clear vision and strategy, instead of just saying, just do it, we should be saying, for our target customer who's struggling with this problem, our product or service is this type of product or service that provides this key benefit or compelling a reason to buy it. Unlike our competitor's product or service, ours does this different or better. And I think that this gives people, if you have a clear vision and a clear strategy for execution, it makes more sense, right? Now, while it doesn't need to be a full-blown, multi-page charter, I'm not looking for the traditional PMI document here. I do think that if you have a single page document that outlines that vision statement that I just threw out there, and it gives you a clear opportunity to understand who the target audience is, what problem are they suffering from, what is your product, how does it solve the problem, who are your major competitors, and why is it important that we're delivering it here right now. And I think that if the teams can understand that, if team members understand that, that's going to be a much, much better place. I was in one company, and this was probably the coolest company I'd ever worked for. I don't know if he'd want me to tell this story, so I'm not going to say the name of the company. I apologize. But one of the things that he did is he really wanted his team members to understand the vision and strategy for his company. So he decided he was going to put together a reward system. So he went and bought a stack of Amazon gift cards. And an Amazon gift card could be valued anywhere from $5 to $100. He mixed them all up, right? So you didn't know which one you were getting. But if you were with the CEO at any point throughout the day, he could walk up to you and just say, "Hey, I don't think I've met you. I'm John." And he said, "I'm William. Pleasure to meet you, William. So tell me, do you love what you do? What do you do here? Well, I'm a sales XYZ. Okay, well, do you love what you do? Well, yeah. Why? What is it that you love about what you do? Why do you do what you do?" And if they could rattle off the vision and strategy the way that I just now described, he would reward them with a gift card. Now, I'm not saying that's the best way to do this, but he would. And it got to the point where people would get in the elevator and see this guy, and they'd be like, "Oh man," because they knew what he was going to ask and they didn't know it. And he'd crack up and he'd ask him anyway, but they wouldn't know. And he didn't necessarily punish them for not knowing. He just said, "You might want to focus on that because it's going to help us all come together." And what was interesting is shortly after he started doing this, you saw the company's gross revenue numbers just steeply increase. And I was just like, man, how did he do that? And when I talked to him about it, he says, by rallying around people at the ground level, people were doing the basic work and making sure they had a clear understanding of what our product or service was and how it helped mankind, it made it a lot easier for them to get their head around or wrap their head around what they should be doing. So it's, this, in my opinion, is probably the most important piece of the entire Agile framework. You need to have a clear vision and a clear strategy. If you make goals a key component of your Agile implementation, whether it's sprint goals or whether it's, product goals or organizational goals, you need to make sure that you have some goals set, because goals are going to make you, really understand what direction you should be moving in. And it's going to help us capture, everything holistically instead of just from a one-sided approach. Oftentimes we just get, we need to do amazing things by this quarter, and it's not enough. The team will be like, yeah, okay. It's like putting those motivational posters up, soar, success, synergy. That's my favorite one, right? And of course they have the demotivation ones and a cat one, so you can make it fun. But the point is, it's like having those posters, but not having any context behind them, right? It's great to look at, but it doesn't give you exactly what you need to do. So for me, goals are just so critical and so important. Make that a key piece of what you do. Next, we have don't micromanage. There's another one that's near and dear to my heart. One of the things that I've discovered is that there's so many times in organizations where we have individuals who feel like, every single thing they do is being watched over. Like here's the executive walking out of the room. I'll call him Project Manager Joe. So Project Manager Joe's walking out. He says, "Better hold that sandwich with two hands, Johnson. You wouldn't want to get mustard on that tie, huh?" Oh my goodness. Right? Wow, that guy. It's so funny because that guy exists everywhere I go, right? It's like, why does this guy have to exist? And it's so funny because you'd think that organizations would have picked up on this by now and that they would have self-corrected or made adjustments. And I'm going to go here. I don't think that this manager or leader means harm. I think that they've just been put in this position so often where they're being asked to do certain things and they're being micromanaged that it's natural for them or normal for them to want to uphold that with other individuals. So instead of being that helicopter boss, as I like to call them, where you're totally micromanaging and just, not social distancing, I put the quote this way. I said, leadership should be focused on the upcoming work and keep just enough distance to allow the teams the freedom to make critical choices and accept mutual accountability for their work. If we can get to the point where we're giving them just enough room to do the things they need to do and just enough power to have success, that you're going to see that the world of work changes, right? that leadership will start trusting people more. And I think this is all about establishing trust, right? The number one reason why leaders micromanage is because they don't trust the team to do what they said they were going to do. So if you can create an environment of trust, you can solve the micromanaging problem. But man, it's hard. This is probably one of the most difficult things. Trying to convince a leader to let go of the reins to gain control is an interesting concept, right? If you let go of the reins and let the teams gain control, you're going to have so much more control. It was Drucker who said, if I build a company and it's a fantastic company, it's not because of the things I did. It's because I surrounded myself with really intelligent people who did the work and made me look good, right? Welch at GE had a very similar statement. It's just, I think that when you stop micromanaging and let the team take control and give them just enough freedom so that they can move forward and make critical choices and get excited about the product or service they're building, instead of worrying about what color tie they're wearing that day in this picture, I think that it gives you an opportunity to really, really accelerate what you're trying to do. It gives you an opportunity to really have that mutual accountability feeling. There's just so much going on here. And I think the other piece of this about micromanaging is a lot of times the teams are micromanaged or individuals are micromanaged because they give poor forecasts. They do poor sizing, or they're estimating everything using time. And I've already decided this is going to be a June webinar. We're going to talk about sizing and the importance of not using time, because I think that's going to solve a lot of your problems. But here, this is just, when you stop sizing using time and you allow teams to properly size work instead of trying to figure out how long it's going to take, what ends up happening is, you get people who are focused on keeping commitments and saying, this is the work we can deliver during this sprint. So I have a really, really good question. Somebody asked me, how can you let a manager or a leader know that he or she is micromanaging without having, retaliation? Sometimes I don't necessarily tell them they're micromanaging. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll pull them aside and I'll say, hey, do you have a minute? Can we close the door? I want to have a conversation with you. And I'll close the door and I'll say, hey, listen, I won't take too much of your time. I really respect and I appreciate, that you're giving me this time, but I trust you and I want to have this conversation with you. I feel like there's something about my job that maybe I'm not doing correctly. And I want you to course correct, help me figure it out, because I found that, the team's still getting a lot of direction from you, which, don't get me wrong, we appreciate having direction. But if the team's going to ever grow and be successful, I need to help them get to a point where they can make these choices themselves. What is it that I'm doing wrong that I can correct to help you have more confidence in me and my ability, and help you have more confidence in the team so that we can deliver this product or service together? So sometimes just turning it around and letting them see, that, hey, I'm not accusing you of micromanaging, and I'm glad you're there and I'm glad you're giving us direction, but could you back off so that we can give the team an opportunity to do that same thing? And I've had great success with that. There's not a leader in the world that's going to say, oh, no, it's not you, it's me, I'm micromanaging. They're not going to say that. What they're going to say is, well, yeah, certainly there's some things you could do. Let me put together a short list, Alfred, and I'll get it back to you. That's what you want. Because what happens is when you do that, then it turns it into an organizational or team issue and not just an issue with an individual, right? It makes it good, because then, it throws the blame back on you. I can't tell you how many times as an Agile coach or as a Scrum Master, I've had to put my head on a chopping block to get someone to understand a concept. But the truth is, once they understand, when you walk out of that room, they look in the mirror and say, I think you just told me I was micromanaging. But they never do it in the meeting, because they don't want you to say, oh, no, that's not what I was saying at all. They don't want to be caught off guard. So they'll recognize it after, but it's just so interesting because you're introducing it just in a way that they'll understand. So in summary about micromanaging, stay far enough away just to let the team make critical choices and to accept accountability. Leadership should focus on the upcoming work and what's coming down the pipe, and give them opportunities to have visual indicators and charts and things that they can rely on so that they can see what's going on. And allow teams to properly size the work in order to keep commitments and make commitments and keep commitments. Because I think if the teams stop using time-based estimation and start really focusing on sizing their work properly and meeting the commitments, it takes the heat off, and it makes people micromanage far less. So I think that's going to be one of the tools that we could use to really, really knock this one out of the park. So I'm excited to go over that with you in June. Or if you can't wait until June, you can always sign up for one of the classes, but that's the topic we cover in almost all of our classes. Last but not least, I want to seal up this one and make sure I leave some time for questions at the end. This is avoid useless meetings. Now, this one to me is fantastic, right? One of the things that I've discovered is, so many people don't know, or I guess they don't realize, the last place people want to spend time is in a meeting. So it looks like here he says, all right, team, we've got 4 hours to discuss how to become more productive. And the little guy at the bottom says, how about starting with not having this meeting would be far more productive, right? But how many times have you been in a meeting to talk about a meeting and have a meeting, right? This is just one of those steps that we take. And it amazes me how far away people fall and how they have meetings that don't have required attendees or what the expected inputs and outputs are. And there's lots of ambiguity and confusion. I have a little secret if I can find it quick enough. So let me see if I can find this secret quick enough. Now, this is really, this is an alpha and not something that I planned on showing at all. But I'm going to introduce you to this now because this is something that's exciting that you'll be able to see here in a very near future from AgileDad. This is called the AgileDad Agile Meetings Playbook, and it's something that we're putting together. Like I said, this is totally alpha. It's not in the marketplace yet. Tells you a little bit about us. Now, I want you to picture this. This could be a spiral-bound book with a spiral on the left-hand side. Or it could be something digitally as a PDF, obviously. And it talks about Agile meetings and why they're important. But then it goes through each meeting. The organizational vision and strategy. What's the purpose? Why is it important? What are we supposed to be doing? Then it talks about expected inputs and outputs, duration, frequency, how often you should have it, and for how long each time. Who the mandatory participants are and optional participants. And then this is my favorite part. It goes through each of the Scrum roles and says, before this meeting, this is what the product owner should be doing. This is what the Scrum Master should be doing. This is what the team should be doing. During the meeting, this is what we expect them to do. And then post-meeting, this is what we expect them to do. So it goes through literally each and every one of the meetings and shows you this is the next one. This is what you should be doing. The next one is a product-specific vision and strategy versus an organizational one, right? And the same information is here. Then we have roadmap planning. Now I'm considering putting in like a sample like this, like a screenshot type thing of what it might look like with some tips, some hints, that kind of thing. But once again, this is a document that's in flight right now within AgileDad. It's something that we're creating as we speak. So this is not a completed document, but it does go through every single Agile meeting, which is kind of cool, and shows you what you should be doing and what you could be doing and how that could impact you. So I think that, having that type of document in conjunction with having an Agile meetings guide in conjunction with, having good, meaningful conversations about team working agreements and how we behave during meetings and how we can keep the meetings short. I think that that's going to help us to avoid useless meetings and make sure we have the proper inputs and outputs and make sure we're not wasting time in meetings, right? That's the big takeaway there. I just don't want to waste time. I want people to feel like they have the time to do the things they need to do. So once again, incredible things you can do. But I have some tips. So here are the tips. So tip number 1, you should identify the top 10 ideas to improve teamwork environments. Work together with leadership. Identify the top 10 small things you can change. I remember in one organization, it was as simple as providing 2 different developers with a desk lamp that got a key for us that helped them be more productive. As silly as it sounds, felt like that environment where they were working, wanted a desk lamp. Simple fix, and productivity went through the roof, right? So you'd be surprised. Find top 10 ideas to improve teamwork environments. Sometimes they're free or inexpensive. Don't be afraid to give it a shot. 2 is dedicate time and dollars if needed to promote individual and team growth. So this is where we're talking about find a way to implement Team John or something like it, right? Find ways to get teams to work together, to grow together, but also find ways to let the core team work in an uninterrupted fashion. Find ways to facilitate inbound interruptions. 3, find ways to continually motivate and educate team members. Provide them with the tools they need to succeed. So find ways to keep people excited about what they do, to motivate them, to energize them, and to give them education needs. So one of the things that we're doing, in case you haven't figured out, is AgileDad University. We're going to continue, even once COVID's over, to provide these free webinars because we feel like there's some great value. And if any of your peers missed it, these are available on YouTube Live. So we're recording there, and we appreciate the folks at YouTube for helping us with this. But we're going to put it on the Agile Dad channel there, so you can have access to the full webinar, end to end on that channel. So that's something that's kind of cool. So we'll have a library of these that you can go back to later and show to your peers, show to your leadership, and really help them get a good understanding. The next one is explore creative ways to empower teams with a limited budget and time. So there's sometimes very small things you can do, like nominate someone on a team to stand up and to help facilitate a meeting from time to time, or help people, or have more meaningful retrospectives. Make sure we're focused on goals at the end of the retrospective and what we're going to accomplish. Just little things you could do that are low budget but high impact, right? Get leadership involved in providing opportunities for team motivation. This is just amazing to me, that you can get people together and you can talk about things, even electronically like we're doing now. But sometimes we forget to invite leadership. And oftentimes what I'll do is I'll gather feedback from the team and bring it to leadership and say, hey, this is where we are. It's a powerful tool. And of course, we have a PDF comic book of this, as well as the other 2 presentations from the last 2 days. I encourage you to download those, and I encourage you to share them. So I want to say that openly. You can openly share those books with anybody you'd like. You can openly share the links to the webinar with whoever you'd like. We want to get the message out there that there's a lot that we could be doing better, especially in this trying time. We want to help people become more efficient. Also, if your organization has any needs, somebody posted in one of the chats, these have been 3 great sessions. Is there any way that we could get you to come out to our company? Absolutely. Either myself or team members, we have a lot of folks. We'd love to come out to your company and talk about these things or any other topics that you have. So absolutely, we do coaching, training, private, public, you name it, and we'll make it happen. So that's kind of where we are. And before we go to Q&A, which is perfectly timed, time boxes work. I'm telling you, time boxes are a good thing. Bob Barker always says, have your pet spayed and neutered. I think that's lame, not having your pet spayed and neutered, but the same message every day. So I'm going to leave you with another inspirational message, a third one, a different one. So let's try it. Here we go. So sometimes I think that we don't dig deep enough inside of ourselves to recognize that we have talents, that we have gifts. And I think that sometimes we don't, or even if we do recognize it, we don't take the time to build those and to foster those, or sometimes we feel like it's not something that we could do in a work setting. So we want to make sure that we're providing a way for people to understand what our skills are, but that we're honing our skills and not pressuring our skills on other people. But what's interesting is whether our skills, photography or writing poems, or it doesn't matter what it is, we need to find ways to look internally and take time away from work to build those skills. Because what's going to happen is, as we build our own internal skills and our own internal warehouse, it's going to help us process information better and become a better person and someone that people like to be around. So whether you're like my oldest daughter, Sarah, and have a love for animals, or my oldest son, Anthony, who turns things on the lathe to help people in third world countries have clean drinking water, or to go serve a mission, or you're like my daughter, Kate, who just wishes to be Rapunzel the singing farmer, or my youngest son, who says one day he's going to teach me how to run this company, or my beautiful wife, who inspires me and uplifts me every day and makes me a better person, right? She's my rock, and she means everything to me. You need to figure out where you are in your journey, and you need to take those talents and leverage those to uplift others. And if you do, I can promise it's going to make you a more whole person. So thanks for an amazing 3 days. I have a couple of questions right here, so I want to make sure I hit these. So I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I always do for the last 10 minutes. Let's see. So the first one, thank you. So I've learned a lot that I can apply to myself and my team. These are great references. Can I distribute this? Yes, absolutely. Please, please, please distribute. I look forward to learning and improving from you again. Oh, good. So I have somebody who said they're going to be in attendance at the May 21st, 22nd session. We'd love to have you. Somebody asked if I'm offering discounts for anyone who attended these webinars at those classes. Yes. Email me if you want to come to any of the sessions that I showed on the screen. We're doing a COVID discount because we realize that there's a lot going on. So we want to provide opportunities for people to attend those sessions at a discounted price. So please, yes, yes, yes. If you haven't already signed up, let's make sure we do that for you. And if you have signed up, we can talk about getting you a bonus for a future class, or maybe getting a friend at a low rate. Let's see. We had another question over here. Yeah, so the last question was just, what other tools or techniques can I use to help make retrospectives, better? So it was a question specifically about making better retros. So the quickest tip I can give you is that we have a tool that we use. It's called a simple retrospective. You can find it on innovationgames.com. And it's a great tool. And it looks like a crosshair. So it looks like you have an arrow going in each direction. And in the top left quadrant, it's the Marie Kondo quadrant. Tell me one thing that uplifted you, inspired you, or made you, or brought you great joy in the last sprint. What was something that brought you great joy, right? The second one is a sad face, top right. And it's tell me one thing that disappointed you individually. So I'm not talking about something that impacted you. How should I put it? I'm not talking about something that impacted the whole team that made you upset. I'm talking about something that just disappointed you, something that didn't go well, something that you feel like, wow, I wish this could have gone better. It would have made things better for me. In the bottom right corner, or bottom left, sorry, bottom left, you put a light bulb. And that's for we can improve this work together to improve this effective. And everybody gets 4 sticky. Let's put 1 sticky note in each quadrant. I'm not a huge fan of anonymity, so I want to make sure each person puts 1 in each quadrant and that we can see who put it there. That way we have people who are, openly speaking to others. 2, I want to make sure that that each person, and that gives everybody an equal voice. So I want to make sure I emphasize that. 2, we want to make sure that we select at least 1 goal each sprint, and that on a subsequent sprint, the next sprint, that we go back and ask ourselves, how do we do in achieving that goal? Is that something that we, do we succeed? Do we still have to work on it? Is there something new that we want to address as a team? And I encourage the team to not pick too many goals. Choose 1 or 2 things that you think you can really impact or improve and run with those. And then 3, I want you to make sure that you keep track of the good things. What do I mean? So like the goals, what I'll do is I'll create, as a product owner or as a scrum master even, I'll request permission from the product owner to create a 0-point epic called goals. And every time we have a retrospective, I'll collect all the goals and I'll add them as 0-point backlog items in there, so that later if the team says, oh, we can't think of anything, I'm like, well, let's revisit some of the ones that we thought of before and see if any of them are still applicable. So you have a record of those. The other one that I collect is the kudos. And this is the cool part. Once a year, I do a kudos wall where we print out all the different thank yous. And what I do is I do some type of mapping. So I'll use a mapping software, and I'll either use it to I'll use different fonts and colors to create like a company logo or an image or, a picture of something. One time I did a picture of the team, and I used all the different, kudos to literally map and put together like a fat head, big wall project. And it was all the different kudos. But if you backed away from it, it was a picture of the team. But if you got up close, you could see it was all type. It was all kudos. And underneath, I put the words "be grateful," and it was just showing gratitude for everything that everybody had done. And on those gratitudes, I like for people to call each other out by name. So that way you could see, over and over again, just how grateful you were for all these people who are on your team. It's just an amazing, amazing tool. It became an Instagram wall where people would go and take pictures in front of it. Leadership would go and read it. You'd see people who are reading it on break crying. I mean, it's super cool, right? It's a way that you can really engage your teams and, get them to communicate more. So that was part of this whole session, right? But and there's a lot more about retrospectives that I teach in my courses, but that was just a small answer. And I have some examples of that. If you want to email me, I can show you, I can give you some information there. What is your opinion on sharing retrospective notes with managers? Absolutely, positively not. Wow, I went there. What happens in a retrospective stays in a retrospective. The purpose and intent of the meeting is for the team. I want the team to feel like they're in an environment where they can talk openly and have psychological safety. If there's a specific topic that we need to discuss with leadership, I may ask permission of the team to discuss a specific topic with them. But I will never, ever, ever take notes out of the retrospective and share them with leadership. It just doesn't happen. The only thing I may share is what our goal was that we selected for that next sprint. But outside of that, that is the team's meeting, and I treat it as such. It's sacred. I don't know which part you couldn't hear. Somebody said they couldn't hear part of it. So I'll just talk about one more time quickly. Crosshairs, top left is what made you happy or your great joy. Top right is made you sad or disappointed. Bottom left is bottom right is kudos. I give everyone in this meeting. So I have each team member put one in each of the 4 quadrants. And then what we'll do is we'll discuss those as needed for as much time as necessary, as long as the conversation is constructive. And then what we'll do is when we remove the notes, I have the product owner create a 0-point epic that's called ideas. And what we'll do is we'll take all those ideas for improvement, the ones that we didn't select to work on, and we'll put them as 0-point backlog items underneath that ideas. And that's a great way to do it. And then for the kudos, I'll collect those throughout the year, and I do that independently, and I don't tell the team I'm doing it. And then usually at the end of the year, sometime in the November, December timeframe, I'll print out like an infographic that has all the different kudos, and they're using different fonts and different letterings. And literally, I'll have like a picture of the team or a picture of my family, like you see on the screen now. And instead of using an image, I use all the type from all of the kudos that were given and create this large, like fathead type infographic. And underneath it, it says something like "Be grateful." And you'd be surprised how many people come up, take pictures in front of it. It becomes like an Instagram wall. You'll see leadership coming up and reading it. It's just super cool to see people get uplifted by it. So I don't know which part of that you missed, but hopefully that gave you everything again to make sure that you didn't miss that. And it looks like the last question, well, it's not even a question, it's just a thank you. I can't say thank you enough. I know time is the most precious thing that you have, and the fact that you carved out so much time to spend with me this week has been amazing. I really, really, really enjoy doing these sessions. I enjoy uplifting people. It's been fun. So what I encourage you to do is tell your peers about it. Let them look at the webinar live, or well, it won't be live at the time. Let them look at it on YouTube as part of the Agile Dad page. Also, I wanted to point out the Agile Dad podcast has been getting more and more people, more and more subscribers. I appreciate that. You can find that, of course, on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio. They all have it. It's just a good way for you to get your daily dose of some Agile love. So thanks again for being amazing. Thanks again for carving out time to be here. And as always, if there's anything at all that you need, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm more than happy to address anything at all that we can do to help you personally or help your organization. And I know that several of you still inquired and said, hey, I'm looking for my next opportunity. Don't be afraid to send along your resume. I can't promise anything, but I'll do the best I can to put it in the right hands of someone who can. So thanks a bunch. Stay well, stay agile, continue on your journey, and don't hesitate to let me know if there's anything that I can do. Have a great day and a great weekend. Until next time, cheers.